Hello, we have a quorum. I know Natalie will be right in by the time we get started. I'm going to start with the formalities. Welcome to the May 6, 2024 Charlottesville City Council meeting. Ms. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Councilor Ostrin, I will mark her present once she arrives. Councilor Payne?
Here.
Councilor Pinkston?
Here.
Councilor Snook is away for travel, and Mayor Wade?
Here. Is there a motion to approve the agenda or amend it?
So moved.
Okay. Mr. Payne, will you second? You second?
Second.
Okay. Okay, we can cast our vote. The motion passes, and the meeting will be divided into 3 sections. The first is a work session to hear and discuss presentations that do not require council vote, and then there will be a closed meeting, and then council will have its regular business meeting at 6:30. At this time, we're going to hear reports. We have 2 reports today. One is on the Charlottesville Albemarle Convention and Visitors Bureau update. Courtney.
Thank you. Thanks for having me this afternoon. I appreciate your time and invitation to be here. I have been here for the past couple of years, so I think the 2 previous Junes. So I thought I would do a little bit of a different presentation today and talk about what we do from the visitor side of things. All right, so today I'm going to introduce you guys to 2 fictional people, Karen and Jim. We're going to talk about their journey to Charlottesville and Albemarle County. So, Karen is the proverbial Karen that we joke about these days, and Jim is very much not like Karen. And what we know about them is that this clicker's not working. Can I get?
Remy, could you progress the slides?
Thanks, Remy. Karen and Jim are familiar with the Charlottesville area, but they haven't had any exposure to our organization. So what does that mean? That means they've probably heard about Charlottesville in the national news. I think we made the national news again yesterday. So this is something that we know that people who don't know anything else about Charlottesville do hear about us. And so that's all they know. So knowing what he knows, Jim decides he doesn't want to come. And knowing what she knows, Karen decides she does. So she books a trip. She stays at a big brand hotel, and she eats at a fast food chain. She stays at a corporately owned winery, and she spends just a little bit of money. She leaves a day early because she's uninformed about what we have to do here and what we're all about. She's not familiar with us, and she never comes back. So that's what happens naturally without the influence of the CACVB. Now, the other scenario. They have been exposed to efforts that we have made as the Charlottesville Albemarle Convention and Visitors Bureau. So they've seen 2 of our accolades. Booking.com's 2023 Most Welcoming Destinations. Outdoor Magazine's 15 Happiest Places to Live. And they've seen our ads. And both of them have the same reaction. We didn't know that this is what Charlottesville was like. And because of that, in this case, Karen decides she doesn't want to come. However, Jim books a trip. And he navigates his way to our website. He checks out to see what else we have to do here because he's seen our ads and he's seen our public relations. And he scrolls down to our Black Seaville landing page. He wants to see how we tell our story. What does that mean? He checks out our videos. He looks at our blog posts. He sees what the articles that have been written on this topic are. And then he looks at our Black-owned businesses. And what he ends up doing is making informed choices. Maybe he's talked to Remy ahead of time. Maybe he sees him at the Mobile Visitor Center. And he decides to book. He stays at one of those Black-owned businesses. And he books a kayaking trip at the Rivanna River Company. He eats at Pearl Island. He strolls down the mall. He makes art at the bridge. And he sips wine at Blenheim. And so his economic impact, especially to locally owned businesses and nonprofits, is way more significant than Karen's was when she was uninformed. And even better, Jim makes a return visit for a corporate retreat, and he brings his business here with him and a group of folks who then generate additional economic impact. That's what we're really trying to do, help people make informed decisions, become familiar with us. And so, giving you a scenario of two fake people, but I have a scenario from somebody who really came. This is Ms. Candace Welch. She was Miss Wheelchair California 2023. After we did 61 accessibility assessments last spring, she came for a visit, and I'll let her tell you her story. Hopefully. Oh, Remy, can you help me out?
Is it a video? Is it a video?
It is a video.
I'm not sure if I'll be able to get the audio to come through.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not able to get it to play.
Okay. Well, in that case, I will tell you what Candace has to say. So, Candace is in a motorized wheelchair, and she has limited use of her arms, and she has no use of her legs. And when she came here, we had special transportation arranged for her. She got to experience everything that we have to offer. She went on the downtown mall. She made art at Picasso Swig assisted. She went up to Carter Mountain. She went all over our destination to explore what it was all about. And what she came away with was a real sense of empowerment, and the fact that she felt seen and that she was very welcome here. And that's really what we want people to come away with. And I'll definitely follow up with you all to share that YouTube link with you so you can watch it if you are interested in seeing what she had to say directly. All right, so I've given you some stories, and it was really about who we are and what we do, but what we believe is creating a welcoming environment for all of our visitors, but that also translates into a welcoming environment for all of us. We believe that tourism should be open to everybody. Our mission is to generate overnight visitation. That is what ends up generating the lodging tax. It also generates other taxes that go into the city's budget, and they fund you all. It also, we believe in being the most inclusive, diverse, welcoming, and thriving destination for visitors in the Southeast. And finally, our values reflect the values that we see in our community. All right, so everyone has different learning styles. So for the folks who love their numbers, here are the numbers. For Charlottesville City, in 2022, these are our most recent economic impact numbers. We saw nearly $400 million of direct visitor spending. So that's in lodging, food and beverage, retail, recreation, and transportation, all within the city of Charlottesville.
Should we ask questions now or save them for later?
Whatever floats your boat.
For back one slide,
Yes.
for the number, especially for food and beverage and retail, how do we know that those are visitors and not local people?
It is folks who are 50 miles away or more.
And we know that by their zip code?
Yes.
When they pay by credit card, for example?
So it's not credit card data. This is data taken in by Tourism Economics, and they do it through U.S. Travel Association for the entire country. So they work with the revenue managers of each city and county to make sure that those numbers match realistically in what comes in from a revenue standpoint, and they figure out how a percentage of how many people would be visitors versus residents.
So it's kind of approximate, like, this is the trend, we're gonna apply it to the money that's been spent here.
Yes.
Got it.
But it's based on actuals, so you're not going to see that number be larger than
Right.
for all of the
Right.
residents.
Of the amount that was spent here, approximately this much is based on out of range folks
Yes,
according to the model that they've created.
correct.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Good question. And please feel free to interrupt me anytime. So for the city of Charlottesville, that equates to $19.7 million in local taxes. And so that's direct economic impact. Indirect and induced is $1.3 billion for the city and the county combined, again in 2022. And to get a better understanding of what indirect and induced means, on the left-hand side is $1 million of visitor spending in these categories, so the same categories that I mentioned for direct visitor spending, they end up producing even more impact in all these other various industry sectors. So how does that happen? Let's say that your hotel doesn't have laundry services on site. They're doing towels and sheets and everything every day, right? They take that off-site to be cleaned. That's an indirect visitor expenditure. So that's how that works in our economy. $19.7 million in local tax collection would fund nearly 400 teachers in Charlottesville schools. So that gives you also another way of measuring the impact of the local tax collection from our industry. I want to thank the City Council for your support during COVID. You provided us with CARES Act funding, you provided us with ARPA funding, and because of that, we were able to recover much faster than other localities. You'll see here that there's a wide range of recovery. Albemarle, during that period of time, also increased some of their room numbers, so they were able to get a little bit higher of an impact than Charlottesville City directly, but we recovered very well overall. And that is really thanks to the investment that you all made, so I appreciate that. Speaking about your investment, just as a reminder, our organization comes from a city and county agreement. A portion of your transient occupancy tax goes to our organization. It is 30% of the first 5%, which is not an easy thing to remember. So next year when the transient occupancy tax is at 9%, those 4% at the end, none of that comes to the Charlottesville Albemarle Convention and Visitors Bureau. We'll overall get 14% of the transient occupancy tax collection. So we get 30% of the first 5%, so that's fixed. So as you increase the transient occupancy tax, there is no additional amount that goes to our organization. And just as a reminder, it is a government organization and not a nonprofit. Find that misconception happens a lot because we are combined with the county, but we have the county as our fiscal agent, and we are technically county employees. And finally, when we do a great job of spending that reinvestment, you see the tax revenue grow, and that is really the goal of our organization and why you invest in us. So I want to think back to Jim and Karen for a second. They had an awareness of Charlottesville. So that meant they had a very basic understanding of what Charlottesville was. But what we found in our research this winter is that only 23% of people who are aware are familiar with Charlottesville. So that's really our job, is letting those 70 plus folks know more about who we are so they can make an educated decision and they consider us as a vacation destination, and the desired behavior is obviously to book a trip here and hopefully return. How do we do that? We have many areas of work, but these are our 4 primary focuses. I sent a document out that was, 30 pages long. So if you had any questions about that, happy to chat through that. And I had a lot of detail in there about how we do these areas of work. But primarily we do promotion, so that's the storytelling about how we talk about our destination. Group sales, when Jim was booking his corporate retreat, that is group sales. He's bringing a group of folks here, and that's an easier way of attracting business than trying to reach each and every vacation traveler. Visitor services, when you saw a picture of Rami at the Mobile Visitor Center, we have 5 locations in the city where we serve people out of our Mobile Visitor Center. We also prepare bags with brochures for wedding parties and other such services. And finally, our newest area is in destination development. So we work with the workforce. We also work with the upcoming workforce. So we have partnerships with Albemarle County Schools. We were at the hiring fair for Charlottesville High School, I think it was 2 weeks ago, trying to educate folks as they are considering areas of work to get into about the options that we have here. And then we educate not only those individuals, but also folks within our industry and build connections among them. It's really important to us that we're not a siloed place and that we're working collaboratively across industry sectors to really make a robust tourism destination here. One of the ways that we have capitalized on all of those connections we've had this year is with our tourism master plan. This is our first ever tourism master plan for this region. It's a 20-year plan. I've included the timeline here. It's not complete. We will have it by the end of June. It should be approved at our next CACVB board meeting, which is at the end of June. But this was built on the visitor research that I showed you earlier. We have all of that publicly available on our website if people want to dig into it a little bit more. We did a lot of work with our stakeholders, so early on in the process in November, we sat down with a lot of the city leaders who are on staff, Parks and Rec, and other folks within the city government to see what plans you all have that we can work with and make sure that we're not planning things that are not in accordance with what you all are trying to do for the future of the city. Then we worked with our stakeholders through a bunch of different ways, through additional stakeholder meetings, interviews, and a survey. And finally, we're working now to identify priorities and recommendations.
Can I ask what SIR is?
I'm sorry, yes, of course. They are a research firm out of Richmond.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was going to show you a video. We do a lot of the way that we communicate things is through video. Rami, I'm assuming you can't go to that link that I sent earlier to play the video?
Possibly.
All right, I believe in you. So, in this past year, our region won Wine Region of the Year for the entire world, which was really exciting. And it is something that our organization submitted for, and we thought it would be really nice if we were a finalist. We had no idea that we would get that kind of level of recognition. And it turned out that it's not only because our wine is phenomenal, but it's also the way that we've been selling our destination and selling it as an inclusive place to come. And I know that wine is primarily in the county, but I also know that the Monticello Wine Company started here in the city, and that we do have a lot to offer in the city, and people come here and they do both. They're hopefully coming to eat and not just drink, and staying at our hotels and shopping. So it's really a holistic experience. How are we doing, Remy?
It's not allowing me to click the links like in the presentation. Are you talking about ones that were in the email or?
Yeah, the second one in the email is also the same link, the Wine Enthusiast link.
Gotcha. Hold on, stand by.
Thanks. I feel like I'm talking to the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, it somehow turns all the presentations into PDFs, so to do a video link, you have to go outside of it,
Got it.
unfortunately.
Next time I'll be prepared.
So Courtney, as he's getting that together, I just had a couple of comments. Can you remind us of when people come here, what are usually the top, 4 to 5, 6 places that if they come in here, they're going to visit?
Yeah, absolutely. So historically, it had been Monticello and the Rotunda. They share a UNESCO World Heritage designation. They're still a very popular places to go. But in addition to that, the wineries are increasingly popular. The downtown mall has been a hub of visitor activity. So I would say that those are, the wineries aren't a singular location, right? But those are the main attractions here. It really does depend on the audience and who we're looking for. Oh, this is looking good. So it is Wine Region of the Year for Charlottesville, Virginia. If you see, it's, I don't know, more than 10 down. Keep going. There you go. All right. So I wanted you all to see what we said on the world stage. Is there no audio? Do you want to ask me anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Sorry?
I serve on the visitors board as a council rep, and I learned a lot. As a matter of fact, there's some courses for giving tours, and I think it'll be cool if the mayor can give tours to different groups and things to visit here. So learning up on that, so hopefully
Are
I'll be
you
able.
leading the training?
I've been doing a lot of unofficial giving walking tours, but I think I should kind of make sure I know what I'm talking about.
I would say you probably do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could I ask
Yeah.
are you finished with the presentation?
I don't know. Remy, have we given up?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it'll let me play the audio.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not.
All right.
I thought I turned it on, but it's not working.
Well, I won't sit here and make you read what I had to say. But the point of this was that we were recognized for our efforts in being racially inclusive with marketing our wine region. And it was unfortunately so unusual that we were able to win the Wine Region of the Year. And it was really amazing to be able to be on that stage, to talk about who we are, to confront some of the assumptions that folks might have about us, and really to have that moment to be able to shine on the world stage. So I will send you all that link too, and I hope that you'll be able to watch it. Thank you.
The agenda links correctly, so if anyone is following along, they can click on the still, and it does take them to the video.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. I was just sort of scanning the documents when I was preparing for the meeting. I can't say I read every one, but was there some notion of a convention, a center? Is that from several years ago, or is that something that's still being talked about?
Yeah, so in 2018, there was a convention center study that was done. So that was right before I was hired, and the CACVB board decided to investigate that possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Our midweek business is weak because we don't have a major transient occupancy, or sorry, major business transient. So usually business transient is when you have big corporations coming in and they do trainings and folks come in and stay for the week and go home, right? And then if you're a beach destination, maybe you have a lot of midweek business because it's the beach. And so what they decided to do was study, like, do we have enough meeting space here to attract meetings during the week? And the answer was no. And then because the Virginia Guest House, what's now the Virginia Guest House, but UVA was announced right after that they were building a conference center that put everything on ice.
I see.
And then that conference center is not all that much larger than any other space we have right now, so it's not really filling the need. So the tourism master plan was considering the possibility of conference center, and what does that mean, and what does it look like long-term for our community if we have one or if we don't.
Uh-huh. And so that will come out of the work that you're doing now?
Yes. I think primarily, or initially it'll be that we need to do a little bit more research about what's happening midweek and what we could capitalize on. And then if that is, we really can't do anymore, then we would revisit the convention center study.
So is that, this is speculating, I guess, but what, if we were to end up doing some sort of convention center, that would be like some sort of joint project with the county, or?
I mean, it's so hard to know, right?
Okay.
Like it's years from now. This is a 20-year plan.
Okay,
So the tourism master plan would propose how you could possibly fund something, but it involves a lot of variables, and
I see.
my board hasn't decided what they want to do about
Right.
it, so
Okay.
we'll see where we go.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. And then in terms of your budget, I'm trying to remember, is it 2.5? What is the contribution from the city every year?
It changes, right? So, in 2020 it was it took a dip,
Yeah.
but we're 2 years in the past.
Okay,
So
Oh, okay.
what we're going into is FY23 lodging tax collection.
Okay.
And it's a little bit over $1 million from the city. Mm-hmm.
From the city. And what's your total budget?
It's around 2.3, 2.4.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you sort of, sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's fine. That's what I'm here.
Yeah, how do you feel about how you're funded, and what you think you're funded enough to do the things that you've been tasked to do, or not, or, I know we often, or not often, a number of times we've spoken in various meetings, like, what is the sort of rate of or the return on investment we're getting from, I know it's hard to quantify because we have a lot of sort of fixed draws here, like the university and other things, but it's clear as well that the work that y'all do also brings in people that come. I mean, how do you feel about your staffing and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think our staff size is great.
Okay.
I'm really pleased with the number of folks we have and what they're doing. Especially, I think it matches the needs of the community. I've changed a lot. I'll have been here 5 years in August, so it's been an evolution. I'll say that this upcoming year, it will be what I would call the first normal year I've had. I was here 6 months before COVID started, and then COVID, and then COVID recovery, and so our budget is actually decreasing this year because we had some recovery funds.
I see.
Which we were able to invest in advertising in Wine Enthusiast, which is what helped us build the relationship to get the award.
Got it.
It's what we used to build our training program called Tourism for All. But now we have those things, so we really invested smart in using that one-time funding to be able to have good tools to move forward with what we have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thanks.
A couple questions. So our recently adopted city budget, 1.5 million was allocated to the CACVB.
Okay.
And FY '23, that number was about 700,000. I'm curious, just from like a practical perspective, what does it look like and what you're doing differently operationally or marketing-wise, like when the budget has doubled in that period of time?
So it hasn't really, because we had the one-time funding from the American Rescue Plan Act. So that's what kind of made up the budget in the meantime. So the budget that you're referring to, and thank you for looking up the numbers, from last year would have been, this is where, FY 2022, right? So we were still very much coming out of COVID recovery. So our overall budget is actually going down because the additional revenue from the American Rescue Plan Act has dried up. So it's not all that different at the end of the day. We're doing less national ad buying and more regional ad buying now.
And then related to that, from FY '23 to FY '24 in your budget, the marketing budget, a little more than doubled. Again, just kind of curiosity, what is a doubling of the market budget looking like practically? Is that larger social media ad buys and print? Like what kind of marketing are you engaged in with, a budget of that size?
Yeah, so again, it's not exactly that way because we had, the ARPA funding, we really did national buys, and now we're not going to be anymore. So in our regular budget, we'll have search engine marketing, so making sure when people Google us, we're coming up, and doing some retargeting so that if people come to our website, make sure they come back. Then we also will do social media advertising, and one of the things that we've done successfully a handful of times has been to bring a DC TV station here and having them film at various locations. So it's really going to be about thinking about the impact that we can make within the drive market.
And for those like national ad buys, has that historically been like television commercials in different markets, or is that taking kind of the search engine information and social media ads and just expanding that geographic area to the whole country?
It's been in major publications. So in Travel and Leisure, Food and Wine, Wine Enthusiast. So trying to make sure that we're putting the local palate. So we tell the story of food and wine, which is how we're telling the Charlottesville and the Albemarle story simultaneously in those major media outlets, which is not something we've ever been able to do before. When I came on, most of our budget was going to our marketing agency, and I wasn't seeing a whole lot of return from that. And so, and we had a PR agency, and so we haven't had an agency since the first 6 months that I've been working here, so they could really get control over our budget, be able to spend in a smart way, in an impactful way, and know that the metrics that we're getting from the advertiser are something that we're looking at and not being massaged by somebody else. So I'm very, having worked in other places, I'm very aware of things that can happen that are not necessarily straightforward, and wanted to make sure that we're being good stewards of the public funds that are entrusted to us.
Definitely. And just the final question, there was great information about how robust our tourism industry is. And I know there's no like perfect lockstep way to do it, but are there any kind of metrics looking at with the marketing budget, how effective is that being in terms of bringing in people to the market, or someone clicking through and then actually coming here, just to try to measure how much is just the fundamentals of the economy are strong in terms of those fixed tourism assets, things people read on their own versus this advertisement bringing them here? Is there any way to kind of measure that?
Yeah, so in the past, before cookies went out of style on websites, you were able to track cookies from advertising to your website to bookings, which was amazing and super creepy. There's a reason it's out of style, right? But we were able to do that at one point in time. We can't do it that directly, and we don't directly sell. But what I can tell you is that if people are coming here for a football game, they're participating in a football game at UVA, and they're not necessarily doing much else while we're here. So that's why we're at Alumni Hall and our Mobile Visitor Center, telling people where else they can go. I know that our Wine Enthusiast recognition has increased one specific tour company does wine tours by 35% this spring. So I know that in the impact for local businesses, I don't have direct measurement, but we can see what people are interested in, how they're engaging, and then we can talk to our partners and say, are you seeing revenue coming in from visitors? And lots of them do. But there are businesses that are in the tourism economy as we define it that don't necessarily think about visitors. So like restaurants, a lot of the bread and butter for a restaurant are their regulars, right? But the additional money that comes in from visitors who have to eat when they're here and they don't usually have a kitchen, that's something that our destination development team is working with them on so that we can help them define what that looks like so that we are able to better answer that question.
Those are all the questions I had.
All right, thanks.
I have if I may have a follow-up to one of Michael's questions. You said that you used to have an outside agency doing PR and another one doing marketing. So since you started, you brought those in-house?
Yes.
Cool.
Thanks.
Nice job.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah. I'm glad that you've done that. I mean, not that I know anything about your business, but it seems like that is a more effective way to really make sure you're getting what you want versus just sort of outsourcing it.
Yes, I very much believe that. And you all know messaging can change at a moment, right? And if I have our marketing director right here, I can call him and say, cancel all social right now because it's not a good time to be promoting our message. that happens very quickly. So that's an added bonus. We have more control over how we're talking about things because sometimes it's not the right moment to be telling people to come to visit, like during COVID.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I guess, sorry, that
No?
also saves us money.
Yes, very
Yeah.
much so.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we haven't been able to have those large advertising buys before, is because, you know, when I got here, we didn't have extra budget to be able to purchase them. So it's a huge cost saver and something that I think is really important for the stewardship of our destination.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything, I'm sorry, is
No,
there
go
anything we could be doing to help in some way?
That's a great question. I want to think about that and not just knee-jerk reaction to it, but I think better understanding the communications that you all have and making sure that we're closely in sync when in the event of a crisis and things like that. It's helpful for us to know what you all are thinking so that we can communicate properly to visitors. You know, with the wildfires a month ago out in the county, you know, letting folks know, hey, you need to avoid this area. We're an additional communications channel, and you don't want all of the residents to avoid an area and then have a ton of visitors show up, right? So using us to be able to get that message out so that we can make sure that we're in sync is really helpful. But I'll keep thinking on it too.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool. Yeah.
Thank you. Just want to add, and I think y'all doing a great job. I know that in our meetings, we talk about the areas that we consider our equals, like Asheville, and I know that their tourism office is, I don't know, triple, if not larger, outside. So we do a lot to promote this area. So thank you and your staff for your work and your efforts. And if there are any other questions, I guess I'll see you in a couple of weeks at the meeting, so.
Sounds good. And please feel free to reach out anytime. Happy to answer questions and provide information. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you so much.
Thanks.
Next is the city's locally administered projects portfolio.
So as Mr. Hicks is preparing himself to begin the presentation, just wanted to offer a couple of comments for council and for the members of the public. It seems as though May has become the anniversary of when we talk about where we are with our VDOT portfolio. I didn't realize that we were establishing that kind of relationship when I first spoke to council a couple years back. But in my prior capacity, I came before this body and laid out for you some concerns that we had and what we felt like we needed in the way of capacity. It came back again asking for additional capacity. And then along the way, I have shared with you that we have discovered a number of things that none of us are satisfied with, but recognizing that there's a number of things that have contributed to it, and the goal at this moment is not to spend a great deal of time talking about that as much as it is about laying out how we get away from that, how do we get past that. So the presentation that you're about to receive is a joint presentation, but it really gives a good sense of us having truly, I believe we have diagnosed all of our problems and we have figured out all of the things that we may need to do. But we're definitely willing to continue to do the work and just wanting to bring everybody up to speed as to where we are at this time as we move forward.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Stephen Hicks. I'm the Public Works Director, and we'll be talking about our locally administered project portfolio. I don't have, the remote's not working, so you'll have to help me next. So a quick snapshot of our portfolio. It consists of $157 million. Of that, we have 29 projects ongoing at various stages. And some have already get ready to go to construction, and some haven't even started. A project team, we have new faces. I want to take the time to introduce the project team that's under now facilities, and I'll talk more about that. There's Michael Goddard. I think we all have worked with him. He's the new Deputy Public Works Director, and he oversees facility maintenance and facility development. And facility development already had a project management team. And so in discussion of trying to kind of look at ways where we could provide the expertise in certain areas. Typically, or was, the project management team was under the city engineer, and now those roles are now under Michael. So now all the project managers, both for vertical and horizontal work, meaning buildings and roads, are under one umbrella to ensure that we have energy there and consistency on how the city manages their infrastructure project. Then I have the senior transportation project manager position that's vacant. We're in the process of looking and interviewing. These positions are tough to fill because one needs to have a pretty strong experience in civil engineering, transportation, traffic, but more importantly, the Virginia Department of Transportation processes and understanding, especially at the senior level. And then we have Lee Cooper. He's our new right-of-way agent. He does all the right-of-way acquisitions for the projects. You'll be getting to know him really well here soon with some of the right-of-way acquisitions that we'll have to be doing. And so he's a great addition to our team. He works closely with our legal department. And then we have, Najee Bahama. He's our new project manager. He's new to this line of work, other than he's had experience doing some transportation projects. He's bright. He's a quick learner, and we have high expectations of him, but no doubt I know he'll deliver.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. And then we have Colin Porter. He's not here. He's at the UVA Transportation Project Management Institute. It's an 8-day training course where they learn how to manage projects related to the VDOT process and just overall good skills to be able to provide and make sure projects are delivered successfully. And then Aaron Abel on the computer, he's our data cruncher. He does all the data collection and looks at where we are on our performance metrics and making sure that he provides the data, both financial data and the schedule data, to make sure we're staying on time and on budget. And then I do want to introduce Brennan. I think we all know Brennan. He's our traffic engineer. He's essential to the team in delivering projects because he provides that perspective from a traffic engineering and the ADA compliance side of the house. And then Gregory, he's our VDOT locally administered coordinator. He's the one who kind of helps us and oversee the work that we do. He's very resourceful, and both VDOT and Gregory specifically, and also Patrick Moore, who's not here, they played a significant role in making sure we turn this ship around. And then, of course, Ben Chambers. He plays a critical role from a transportation planning perspective. He's the one who kind of sets the vision of projects as well as help us with the funding and provides all the scoping needs. So that's a quick summary of our team. Next. So while we have teams, our project team, we do have closely to about 14 other individuals or departments or outside agencies that play a critical role in the collaboration of delivering a project on time. As you can see, there's a lot, and a lot of it is internal, but then at the same time, we do rely on VDOT. And it's critical that we're all on the same page when we start a project, because I'll share with you all, there's multiple phases and multiple activities, and we all need to make sure that we understand the schedule and the cost in delivering a project. Next. So, in January, the city manager, Mr. Sanders, he received a letter from the Virginia Department of Transportation, the Culpeper District engineer, Sean Nelson, pretty much saying that what we knew and what we were anticipating, because it was elevated at the central office level, that we're deficient. We were not delivering projects on time, period. And not only that, but some of the projects were going back to 2011, 2016, 2017, and even the ones that are in the 2016, 2017 phase, they're still not delivered. So as a result of this letter and also some prior deficiencies that that the city manager identifies well with some other team members. He collectively started coordinating with the district engineer quarterly meetings to kind of really figure out what's going on, what do we need to do, where's the resources, what capacity we need, because we were just more interested in just turning this around. While we identified the problems, that was helpful, but we wanted a solution where we never get into a situation where we get another letter from Virginia Department of Transportation. So some of the findings were we were lacking a team approach. We were lacking the fact that we all work together, we all play a critical role. This isn't just a project manager's responsibility. It requires so much collaboration that it was important. But the other area that we identified is we didn't have the best relationship with the Virginia Department of Transportation. And if you don't have a good relationship with the agency that one is very resourceful, and by the way, they're the one funding the projects, you can eventually get into a point where I think we started pointing fingers. And that was not healthy for delivering projects. And at the end of the day, the citizens were the ones who ultimately were hurt by it. Also, there was no clear strategy or plan or mission. There was no strategy on how we're going to deliver the projects, what resources are we going to need, how are we going to focus on the priorities of the projects, what projects should VDOT administer, and more importantly, what are the ones we should give back to VDOT, maybe because we didn't have the skill sets or we didn't have the capacity, and that was carefully looked at. But at the end of the day, we were not delivering projects on time and on budget, period. And as a result, VDOT identified areas of concern. This was a crisis because if you lose the credibility with an agency as big as VDOT, and they're the ones funding our road systems, it definitely can impact us on how we have a vision or plan for land development, or also just make improvements for pedestrian usage or other type of road improvements to either improve capacity or look at other modes of transportation. So we had to fix this. And so the way we identify it was the Department of Transportation pretty much told the city manager that you will go on a projects development improvement plan. And in other words, that's a fancy word for a correction plan. They wanted some ink on paper that demonstrated that we're serious of what we're going to do it, and what's the plan, and how are we going to do it, and how is it going to be sustainable. And so we worked on that for months. It was finalized in January this year. Central office and Mr. Sanders, they signed the letter of a commitment of what we're going to do to turn our program around. And it was important because I would say that we're losing public trust if we tell the public, hey, we're going to build a road on December of 2025, and then February comes around of 2026, and the project's not delivered. And so what that means is you can just randomly, arbitrarily start showing dates or committing to dates, and as a citizen, I don't know if they believe we were really going to fulfill what we said. So that was pretty much an empty promise. It was pretty much, I hear you, but I don't believe you. Until you start showing that you're going to start delivering projects on time, during even the public hearing processes or public engagement, if we were to go out there and tell them, oh, this project's coming and we're going to do it on a certain day, a lot of the community members would just say, we've heard that before, and why hasn't anything been done? So part of the correction plan, and I'll be saying that because I think we need to emphasize, really, that's what this really is there was no performance measures, and so as part of the correction action plan, we had to create some performance measures to demonstrate how we're going to meet certain goals, but specifically VDOT's goals, because they're the one who are funding the projects, and we have to have a drawdown and spend the dollars to make sure we're committing those dollars based on the federal government fiscal year cycle, and I'll share more on that. Next slide.
Steve, when was the PDIP signed again?
It was signed January of this month.
Just this year.
This year,
Okay.
yes. So So I'm going to touch base on the locality sustained performance improvement plan. And this was the process that's been provided by VDOT on how they're going to come up with metrics and how they're going to measure a locality success. And so one of the areas, the corrective action plan, we were the first who received a corrective action plan, the first locality. And it's going to be a model for other localities who also aren't delivering projects on time and have a deficiency for whatever reasons. So that raises the bar to make sure that now we got a plan and we got to execute it. But the three areas that they're going to be measuring us is on-time performance, responsible progress, or reasonable progress, and then fiscal management. And I'll go through each one of those. Next. So numbers don't lie, but liars will figure. At the end of the day, we're delivering about 3 out of 10 projects on time. And that depends how you define what's on time as in establishing a fixed date. So VDOT would like to see you at least delivering 70% of your program on time. And those activities can vary because we have 7 phases of an activity on developing a project, but there's mainly just 3 critical ones that we focus on. And that's the preliminary engineering, the design, the public hearing and right-of-way acquisition piece, and then the construction piece. So you can have a project, let's say for 12 months, and you're 6 months behind. It took 4 months to do design, but you're at 6 months right now. You're behind for all the other phases. It has a ripple effect. So then it turns into the next slide, reasonable progress. Next slide. So the reasonable progress is a way to identify if you're slow on design phase, how is it going to impact the right-of-way of construction to complete a project, and where do you need to catch up to some extent? So what VDOT is asking us to do, they give you a 90-day grace period to be able to say, all right, you're behind on PE, and we're going to give you 30 days or 60 days until you demonstrate that you're going to be able to get, let's say, to a right-of-way phase part that they have to authorize. They allow us a grace period to catch up. That's the only best way I could say it, and not get hit as hard because we're not delivering projects on time. But at the end of the day, they hope when the project is completed or advertised and traffic is on the road and pedestrians are walking on the sidewalk, we met the end completion date. And right now, we have turned this ship around. We are making progress. We're 60%. We have been able to demonstrate that we are slowly making progress on our projects in the past year or two, which demonstrates we are slowly getting back to delivering projects on time. But there are the old projects that are still under design in 2017, 2018. There's not anything we can do. Those projects are late. Our scores are going to be down. It's going to take a good year before we see some of these scores meet the expectations of Virginia Department of Transportation. And then the next one is, next slide, is how we manage our dollars. We're doing a good job here. Earlier in the year, we weren't. Mr. Sanders made a point that he wanted to make sure that we start managing our dollars, and the area where you see there is the reimbursement process. And the way it works is the city pays the contractor or consultant to do the work. Let's say it's $2. Then we submit it to VDOT and we receive the $2 back, right? So it draws down on the VDOT funds. But how they measure if we're doing right is the formula is whatever's been allocated, $10, minus the expenditure, $6, means the balance is $4. Well, we have $66.9 million of unexpended funds. So that means we still have a lot of dollars that we need to either get started on projects or submit to VDOT to get reimbursed. And those were the things that were identified as part of the process to make sure things are going right. Because what happens is the federal government has expectations that you spend the dollars because there's other needs out there, and then if they don't have the trust that you're going to spend those dollars, they may need to want to use those dollars for other localities. So it's critical that we manage our dollars This area was a priority for the city manager, and we're already on track on this area.
Can you clarify something on this
Sure.
slide? Sorry to interrupt. Those 66.97 million, is that like city funds we have stashed away somewhere, or is that money available to us from VDOT?
Those are the funds that have been allocated to VDOT as a grant. And then while the dollars come available, to answer your question, yes, we have those dollars available for transportation where we appropriated and committed those dollars.
So those are potential so that's in a bucket somewhere set aside city money. If and when we spend that, VDOT pays that back.
Correct. And it can only be used for VDOT funds. We couldn't use that to do anything else with, because
And-
it's like a grant. It's a
Right.
wash.
And so that money has been accumulated by putting money into that fund at various points over the years.
Correct, and not moving projects along.
Right.
And that was a concern the city manager identified. Next. So the corrective action plan, our focus areas, mission. It's real simple. We're going to deliver projects on time and on budget. We don't need a long mission statement. We don't need to discuss the why we can't do projects. We just need to deliver projects on time and go from there. Also, build a strong team in place. We did do the reorganization. I shared with you all the project managers were under the city engineer. They're now under the deputy public works director, Michael. We have new faces. I asked that they be here because what I do know, next year, Michael will be doing this presentation. And then you will be seeing also project managers coming up and bringing forward updates on projects, as well as some other subject matter expertise and stuff. And the other one is Virginia Department of Transportation relationship. It is solid. I would have to say that in my experience, this is one of the better relationships I've seen with the Virginia Department of Transportation. It's fortunate our city manager has Sean Nelson, the district engineer, on speed dial, and they have a great relationship, as well as us having a great relationship with the locally administered coordinators. And we have our monthly meeting on a regular basis just to go over projects to make sure the status is fine. We will be entering into it was an MOU, but and that's a error on my part, but it's a memorandum of agreement to give the flexibility. We will be presenting this to you. The flexibility, should VDOT or should the city identify certain projects, it just makes sense that VDOT administers them, that it allows us to go into an agreement where VDOT will administer them, and they understand some of our design expectations when they do move forward with a project. And we're hoping through results, it's no hope, we will be restoring public trust. It's so critical that we have credibility with the public. From my experience, when you go out to the public, and we're going to be going out to the public and getting them engaged, you have to be able to demonstrate that you deliver projects on time. There's no question around it. My experience is when you tell someone you're going to deliver a project, let's say in October 2027, come October 2027, they remember that day. They may not remember the cost of the project, but they'll remember when you told them that you're going to open the road. The budget, Chrissy and our project management team, we are now talking more. And each project manager, they're not keeping track of their own records. It's an open book, and we are making sure that when we get invoices, we're paying those invoices in a timely fashion, and that we are having models that demonstrate when we're going to be drawing down on projects and their schedules. And then urban design, we see transportation, Lincoln Transportation, with land development critical and how it all works together. This is in Ben's wheelhouse. He is the individual that has visions of new projects that we're going to be designing, or projects that are under design now. And he will be carrying the ball to our project management team. We're not planners. We design it and we build it, but we rely on Ben to kind of help us navigate how the feel, how the look, where should it be, and identifying the scope of projects. And I think you've already heard from Ben multiple times. He's great at his job, and he's really been a great asset to us. And then project transparency. We will be going live on our website on when projects are going to be completed, and those dates will not be moved, hopefully. I mean, there's going to be unforeseen circumstances, obviously, but our goal is in midsummer, end of July, we'll have all projects on our website, and it's kept up on a daily basis. So any citizen could go on there and figure out what project is being delivered or what project is being managed, when it's going to be completed, but more importantly, if they need to talk to a project manager, they can pick up the phone and call them and discuss it. And at the end of the day, we're instilling a sense of urgency. We just have to make sure that every day matters. Projects go over budget $1 at a time, and they get behind schedule 1 day at a time. So every day is critical, and we got to make sure that if we say we need you as a team, it could be in procurement, it could be in legal, it could be in budgeting, it could be in any other of the internal departments we have. You play a role. If you commit that you're going to do your part, we would like for you to demonstrate it so we can go ahead and move forward with projects. Next slide. I'm not going to go into the details of these. I think y'all are familiar with them, but the big funding programs, always remember they're even years. Unfortunately, we didn't apply for any smart scale projects because VDOT just didn't trust us that if we gave you the dollars now, that you're going to be able to spend them. And that is not a good thing. That's actually embarrassing. But they also realize that we've turned the program around, and Ben is already looking at planning to apply for projects in 2026. But we got to make sure we have the capacity to handle them, and we got to make sure that when we do apply for those funds, that we have a very clear scope and a very clear plan of how we're going to deliver them. And then the odd years are more of, I would call more smaller scale projects. They're the revenue sharing projects, dollar for dollar match, and then the transportation alternatives and stuff. And then the annual state of good repair, that is like the Dairy Road Bridge replacement. We get funds for that, and also some of the paving programs. Next. And then the project development process. There's a reason this is fuzzy. It's mainly used as just a picture of the expectations on delivering a project, and there's multiple activities. If you can just see, this is a picture's worth 1,000 words. This just kind of highlights the complexity of delivering a project. And it doesn't matter if it's a small project or a large project, it still has the similar steps and the similar attention you need to deliver a project. But I will be talking about the 7 phases here real quick to kind of highlight a quick overview for you and the citizens to understand. So the next one. So here are the 7 phases of a project. The first phase is initiating it. Once the PE is authorized to start the project, project management team goes to the council to provide you a city VDOT locally administered agreement, which means that VDOT is agreeing to the locality to manage the project, and council is authorizing the city manager to execute any and all contracts to make sure the project is delivered on time. This will always be brought to council for approval to determine if this is a project that you will want to staff to manage. That typically takes 2 to 4 months. Then the scoping piece, the next phase, 2 phases, phase 2 and 3, is partially in Ben's area. Ben works with the project management team to identify the scoping of what needs to be done. Is it a 5-foot bike multi-purpose, or an 8-foot multi-purpose lane, a 4-foot sidewalk? How does it blend in? Is there landscaping? He has the vision. He also understands what the needs are, and then he hands it off to us to start the design work. But transportation planning is still part of the design team and the design work. But those take between 4 to 9 months. Again, it depends on the complexity of the project. And then the detailed design. Once we have the design somewhat completed, this is where council comes in. During the detailed design and public hearing, After public hearings, we will come to council to give an update on what the community members have shared or what their concerns are. And then we go into finalizing the design and then the right-of-way acquisition. And I would have to say phase 4 and 5, you all are part of that key partnership to making a project successful. Those areas are going to require decisive decision. They're going to require some more discussion on the needs of the project. But once you get to phase 4 and 5, any changes to the design or altering it, not only will it increase potentially the cost, but more importantly also delay the project. So phase 4 and 5 are critical, and depending on the scope, again, it could take up to 18 months. And then after we get through right away, it's downhill. It's advertisement, and then the fun part is construction, where community members need a part in our dust because it is going to be like bacon sausage, and sometimes there will be significant traffic delays. So what does this mean? A project range typically, if everyone stays focused and keep their eye on the ball, it's 3 to 8 years. That's a long time. And it doesn't matter the size of the project. Preston Harris, for example, is just a simple traffic signal with some pedestrian ADA improvements. That's anticipated to take 3 to 4 years, and it's been under design already for a while, 60%. Ben's going to go over them. So the point of it is it takes time to deliver a project, and while we build this team, we will need patience. But there is very clear guidance. That's the best way I could probably share with Mr. Sanders, is we mean business, and he wants to turn this around. And next slide. I believe that's
Real
the
quick
last slide.
before we
And I
pop to
appreciate it.
the
Yeah,
next slide.
questions. Yeah.
That 3 to 8 year time frame, especially for a project like the small one you just described, is that the case for any kind of road project or just any kind of project that involves VDOT reimbursement?
I would say, to answer your question, yeah, 3 to 8 years. Once you have $1 of VDOT funds or federal funds, you're looking at following their process. And it's the public hearing and right-of-way process that could slow things up. Our dollars, it still requires, we don't deviate so much from the project management process. It's the public hearing engagement and right-of-way process of how we can have a little bit more flexibility in VDOT that kind of reduces the time. Does that make sense? So it's our dollars. Mm-hmm. We're in control of what we want to do. VDOT still has to review and concur. It's still our project, but they still want to concur and make sure we're following VDOT and the Federal Highway Administration's guidelines. So public hearing and right-of-way is very, very restricted on what we can do.
Theoretically, a project could be done faster if VDOT was not involved or the feds weren't
Absolutely,
involved.
yes.
Okay.
There's
thank-
less strings attached. That's a good question.
Right, thank you.
So before we shift to Ben's section of the presentation, I would just like to hear any further comments or questions from you all, because this first section of this presentation was about systems change. It was also about us being in the confessional and telling the truth about what's been going on. And I'll point out that this was not a comfortable presentation to ask for and to put together and to deliver. He didn't want to go there. He wanted to be positive about everything. But I thought it was important for all of you as well as for the public just to appreciate that we're admitting that we have a lot of work to do and that it requires some systems changes. That's really what this is about. I mean, the things that we have moving, we're shifting around, and we're not shifting around untested. We're trying to figure things out and then more or less making sure that we're going in the right direction. The point of the matter is that we're trying to turn this around in a way that, one, we can deliver the projects that we've already committed to, but two, we can handle the projects that we know everybody wants us to be able to take on. And a part of that process is for us to get a little bit more deliberate about what we take on and when we take it on. We've been saying yes to a lot of stuff that we probably as a team should have thrown up our hands and screamed no. I think you all know me by now. I'm prepared to do that. And I will continue to do that because they've been trying their best. For those, a few of them I'm not even going to look, but a few of them have been trying to express to council, to past administrations, we need to do something different, and no one was listening to them. So I've been wanting to thank all of those folks for getting through what they've been through, but to also join in this effort of nobody's blaming. There's so many different ways and places that I could point and all that. It's just not important at this time. The key is to make sure that everyone is understanding how far behind we are. Greg being here and Sean, they've been amazing. They could have clamped down on us a lot sooner by now. And they've been willing to continue to let me beg and then respond to my begging and pleading, please don't do this, please don't, let us try to figure this out. And it's all been much appreciated, and I think we're beginning to see the fruit of that. It's already turning around. We already have more of this collegial spirit internal. We still have some process fixes internal that we need to do, and as we make those things happen, it'll get a lot easier, but a project takes the time that it takes. So I just want to make sure that much was stated. I know that we have members of our public who appreciate hearing this because this is clearing things up, because they haven't necessarily understood why. Now we're showing you some of the why, and Ben's going to talk to you about what the impacts on some of the projects are going to be. But the most important thing for us to do at this point was just to really be honest and tell you what's going on.
In that vein, one question is, would you say it was unique or unusual how many projects Charlottesville was locally administering versus VDOT administering? And is the city changing in any direction from how that is done?
Both. How about that? I would say when I say overpromise, I think we were happy about applying for grants, knowing that we would receive them because Charlottesville is the largest city in the area, so we qualified just based on certain criteria. We did a great job applying for grants. We didn't have a plan on how we're going to execute the projects. So I would say, yeah, we bit off more than we can chew. Probably the scale of the projects and the size with the staffing that we had. So with that said, if we had the relationship with VDOT, I can't rewind the tape. I believe we could have talked with VDOT and said, we still need these dollars because despite who's managing the projects, the people who are on the road and the people who want to walk and ride their bikes, they're going to be punished if we don't take these dollars on. So can VDOT help us and manage those projects? Because they do have the capacity, they do have the expertise, and they pretty darn do a good job at what they do. And so that's where we were from a standpoint of lack of relationships, over-promising what we can do, and not having a plan to execute it. I hope that helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and would just underline, I think this presentation might, for some members of the community, might have felt kind of just like numbers or something, but for anybody who cares about transportation system, infrastructure, sidewalks, bike lanes, I think this is one of the most important structural challenges the city has faced, and I think it's clear that there's a recognition of that in changing the structural problem that led to this point. So just very important, and I would say I am still prepared for, in the project timeline, those areas where we were held up in terms of right-of-way acquisition. I'm prepared and comfortable with us doing what we need to do to rectify that going forward as well.
Thank you.
I have some questions. Some of these I think might be answered by Ben, so I'll hold on to a couple. But for the benefit of whoever's out there listening, can you mentioned generally there's projects that we fell through on. Can you give some specific projects so people have an idea of what we're referring to?
Ben will cover that.
Okay.
I mean, he has all the projects. You'll look at some of the completion dates, and you'll probably say, they've been going on for years. Mm-hmm. And that's where those questions or anything you have, that would be the appropriate time, because there's been a lot that are going on much longer than they should.
Okay. Can you explain the difference between a VDOT road and a city road?
Yes. So a VDOT road is a road that the Virginia Department of Transportation, they main and they have jurisdictions over. And in some cases, they're a federally highway route, all right? And typically, they're primary routes where they carry most of the traffic. There could be some collector roads and stuff, but in general, cities are responsible for maintaining their own roads, depending on what they call the road classification. And there's a series of road classification. A city road is where we receive VDOT maintenance funds to maintain those roads. We own them. And so we have the opportunity to, when we apply for funds for construction, to some extent, it's our responsibility, or could be our responsibility, to maintain those roads, to provide the flexibility of what we feel we need based on certain design criteria, understanding the community a little bit better. But there is a difference between a city road that we receive maintenance funds to help maintain, and then roads that VDOT maintains.
And
So
we
it's very
have
clear.
both.
Yes, we have both
Yes.
within, like hydraulic road, VDOT's building that road.
250.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the county is all VDOT, right?
VDOT falls under the Byrd Act, where localities are not responsible for their secondary road systems. And VDOT maintains all secondary road systems and roads that go through them and stuff.
Great,
I think
thank you.
Arlington and Henrico County are the only ones who are exempt from that.
You mentioned that we're having a better relationship with VDOT nowadays, but I've also heard that VDOT's priorities are getting more cars into and through Charlottesville, whereas our priorities are different, but also we just don't have the space to continue storing and adding more cars forever. So how is that getting squared?
Well, VDOT does work with what they call a long-range transportation plan and some master planning, and they do take in consideration other modes of transportation in their scope, design of the work. But typically, the projects that they do work on, the roads are so highly congested and been in the planning phase for so long, there's an immediate need to do something now, recognizing that planning for multi-purpose modes, either sidewalks or multi-purpose paths or dedicated bike lanes, while they're important, there's only so many dollars available where VDOT can work with to improve the road network system, because their goal is to keep vehicles moving, but recognize that when there are opportunities to build additional infrastructure for different modes of transportation, they will take that into consideration. But the closer you get to areas that like are at interchanges or already primary routes that are already 2 or 3 or 4 lane roads, VDOT does look at how they can reduce congestion. Now, the fact that the roads are designed to provide or to increase traffic within the city, a lot of that is just land use driven and the desire for people to work in the city or live in the city, and that's their way of getting here. That is hard to control no matter where you are. And so even if we were to have all the dollars in the world to in certain areas that are highly congested to provide other modes of transportation, it would make a very small impact on the consistency of moving vehicles or people out of cars onto the road. While there's some advantage of it, and the city that's one of their priorities to look at it, it would not provide consistent ways to remove vehicles off the road. And so when we're looking at congestion volumes of 10 or 15,000 vehicles a day and peak left turning movements of 350, it would take a lot of people to get out of their vehicles on those heavily congested roads to be able to remove the design of VDOT projects.
Yeah, I understand all of that. I
Yeah.
just sometimes think about VDOT as forgetting that transportation is more than just cars in what they're proposing and what they're they shifted the rules of Smart Scale to be more to favor car projects over bike ped projects. And that was a policy choice that I find frustrating and short-sighted. So I just want to keep, the city priorities in mind while we work with VDOT on this, and not kind of lose track of the fact that we do have limited size and scope to add more vehicles, and transporting people doesn't default to transporting cars.
Definitely.
My last
Okay.
question, is that 66.97 million that we talked about earlier in the bucket for projects, is that available for any transit project, or what are the limitations there?
Not transit.
Hang on. Chrissy? Because we need to make sure we get the mechanics cleared up.
So when we budget for the projects in the CIP budget, you'll notice that there is a project budget for the expenditure. It's also offset by a revenue budget, be it federal, state dollars, or city match. So while the project is on our books and is available to be spent, when we talk about cleaning up the CIP, and I think we've talked about this before, that the budget may or may not, we can't just reassign it to something else, because those dollars don't exist if VDOT doesn't reimburse us. So it's really not, there's not a pot of $67,000 sitting in a bucket for us to allocate. That money is a pot of budget that is there, but we spend the money on the project. We get reimbursed in a very short order from those expenditures. So it's therefore just a budget. It's not dollars sitting in a bucket.
And thank you for explaining that. And for those projects that we've already kind of set aside and allocated that for, expecting that reimbursement, what are the limitations on what we're allowed to, is it just roads, or are there other things we can spend that money on and expect that reimbursement?
So it's not money to spend, it's just a budget, and that budget is allocated to these specific projects, and they're offset by the anticipated funding plan for that project. So if you have $66,000 allocated for transportation projects, and we know that $60,000 of that is coming from VDOT, if you reallocate that $60,000, we have to figure out how else you're going to pay for it, because VDOT's not going to give us that $60,000 now. So when we're running our debt projection, $60 million. When we run our debt projections, when we're looking at our debt service cost, when we are looking at our transfers to the CIP, all of that factors into a long-range plan for how we're paying for the projects.
And just look at it from the sense of, it's a commitment. When we have submitted the request, that's like a grant proposal. VDOT has reviewed it. The project is now grant funded. We haven't received the grant funds. We reserve in our budget the capacity for being able to deliver the project to then get the reimbursement later. So it's not flexible at
Right.
that moment, because we have a commitment tied to it.
Right, but so are the only projects that have been using this system car and road projects?
Roads, sidewalks, traffic signals,
Okay, so it's.
streetscapes.
Okay, so it is broader.
Yes, and we
Okay.
have
That was
we have
what I was
a
trying to
series of all of those different things. So if you're looking to make sure we strike a balance in what we go after, that's going to be tied to the funding source that's available. It has its own set priorities, and that's really why Ben's position was so important for us to have, so that we can start looking forward. Stephen and team are going to execute what we've committed to. Ben is supposed to always be looking at what's next, what's coming, and pulling in the rest of the team members for that.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't sure what the limitations on
Sure.
that reimbursement were.
Got it.
Thank you.
So we're getting short on time, and as, I guess, Ben, as you're coming up, if you could
Yeah, I'll try to do as
shorten yours.
quickly
but-
as possible.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, as part of the VDOT, that I'm glad that we, is very similar to the discussion we had about cats a few months ago. You're being brutally honest with us, and
I
that's
have
good
to
to know.
be.
We have to know. I did this for 20 years with the county. I was the county's, main rep with VDOT for projects. So those relationships are really important. So thank you for your next steps with this. So
Great.
again,
Well, thanks for having me again, Council. I was here a few weeks ago talking about transportation projects, and I said I'd be back to talk about the ones that are funded by VDOT, so here we go. I'm going to try to get through these as quickly as possible to get you guys to dinner. As you can see, we have basically 4 large buckets of the kinds of projects that we have. We have streetscapes, trails, intersections, and bridges. There are a couple other funding types that I'll talk about later, but those are the big ones. With those projects, we have most of them look like they're in design or right-of-way phase. We have a few that are under construction or about to be under construction, and then a couple that have funding awarded to them already but have not yet gotten started yet. They don't have the funding available quite yet. We're going to start with streetscapes. This is the largest bucket that we have. Councilor Oshrin, you were asking what are the projects that we've been sort of stumbling on. These would be the ones. We started these projects back in the mid-2010s. These are larger scale efforts looking at corridors, our major corridors in the city, and looking at turning them into a place, making bike ped improvements, upgrading traffic patterns, basically beautifying these corridors and making them welcoming to everyone. Most of these are funded through Smart Scale. They were funded in early rounds of Smart Scale when there weren't as many restrictions on application types and numbers of applications you could go after. So we went after a lot of them, and we were awarded a lot of them. One of them that we were awarded was several phases of the West Main Street streetscape project. There were 4 different phases of that project. It was a huge project. It was ultimately defunded in 2021. But we still have a lot of other large projects that are on the books for these streetscape projects. Most of the work is not visible. That means we're in the design phase or we're in the right-of-way phase, and you're not seeing people out on the ground doing surveying, you're not seeing construction happening, and so it seems like nothing's happening with these projects, but assuredly there are things happening with these projects. A lot of them are in right-of-way phase, so you're going to hear that quite a bit as I go through these. First one I'll start with is East High Street. This is kind of a continuation of the Belmont Bridge project. It goes from Market Street down to Locust. This will give us new multimodal improvements along that corridor, make it safer for bikes and pedestrians. We're looking at a winter completion in 2026 for this project. Currently, it's in the right-of-way phase. Fontaine Avenue, we're waiting to go into the right-of-way phase. We have a 60% design that we're waiting for approval from VDOT. This is another streetscape project that will add in bike lanes, sidewalks on both sides of the road, formalize where the parking spaces are, and this goes between JPA and the city boundary. We'll also talk about another VDOT project that's just beyond the city boundary a little bit later if I can get to that quickly enough, but we're looking at this being completed in summer of 2026. Emmett Street is actually 2 different projects. We have 2 phases for that. The first goes from Ivy to Arlington, and then the second one goes from Arlington to Barracks. The first phase is looking at being completed in spring of 2026. It's currently in the right-of-way phase. The second phase, the funds come online this year, so we'll begin design work on that. Overall, we're looking at a corridor between Barracks and Ivy that will have improved bus stops, a shared use path, landscaping, pedestrian improvements at crossings, and a tunnel that goes underneath the railroad tracks there between Ivy and Barracks Road. At the end of that project, we have another project called Barracks at Emmett Street. This is a shared use path that will go up Barracks Road from Emmett Street, from basically the end of the Emmett Street Phase 2 project. We're looking at this completing in fall of 2026, and it's currently in the right-of-way phase. Ridge Street is a new project this year. It has awarded funded already through Smart Scale. We were originally given funding in 2020 for a project that was at the intersection of 5th, Ridge, Cherry, and Elliott. And then in 2022, we were awarded more funding for a neighboring project that goes from Cherry and Elliott up to just south of West Main Street on Ridge Street. In 2023, we combined those 2 projects into one project. The funding for both projects, or the single unified project, becomes available this year, and we'll start design work on that. Now we're going to jump to trails projects.
Can I ask a quick question, Ben? So are these items also, are they duplicated on that nice sidewalk
No, so none of these will show up on the sidewalk priorities list. That's looking at what we're going to invest in next. So these are things that we've already committed to and we've already got funds set to. The sidewalk priorities list is stuff I'm going to be asking for funding for.
Got it.
All right, so I'm going to hit a few trails projects here. This is the Meadow Creek Valley Trail. This is going up Meadow Creek Valley, sort of behind Whole Foods area, up into Greenbrier. Our design plans are completed for this. Our permits are in place. We're currently looking at deeds right now. We're looking at completing this in summer 2025 and having a nice recreational bike ped facility through this neighborhood. Rugby Ave shared use path. This is building a shared use path that will go under 250 from Rugby Ave at Westwood into McIntyre Park. Construction is about to go out to bid. We're looking at this being completed in the fall of 2024. Previously, this was a two-way road with traffic on either side of this median that you can see that is currently blocked by the construction. That traffic will return to both sides of the median. It won't have as large of a lane in both directions in order for us to fit in the shared use path, but it will have that traffic in both directions. This project originally had a four-way stop at Westwood, which was taken out for financial considerations at some point during the project. We're going to be adding that back in as a quick build solution once this project is completed. So when I say quick build, I mean paint, plastic, signage, and then we'll look for funding to complete it in concrete once we have everything in place. Washington Park, Madison Avenue connector. So right now there is a staircase that connects the bottom of Washington Park to Madison Avenue. You can see I think it's tennis courts or basketball courts at the bottom of Washington Park there. And then up in the right corner is Madison Avenue. Those two neighborhoods are connected by just a staircase right now. It would be a useful connection for our ADA users, our bike users, if there was a ramp there. So we're building one this summer, should be completed in early fall 2024.
This is going to tie into the work that the group did with the baseball fields and behind Burley School.
I don't know that they're directly linked, but
Okay.
yeah, Parks
Okay.
is working on them together.
Okay.
Now we're going to look at some intersections. First one is Rose Hill Drive at Rugby Avenue. We're coordinating the final powering of that traffic signal that's there, and then we'll go in and do the final repaving of the intersection. It will have improved crossings for pedestrians, and that's pretty important because this is a major corridor for our Safe Routes to School program. And we're going to have upgraded signal infrastructure here. We're expecting this to be completed this summer, so well before the beginning of next school year. We also have a project at 10th and Grady Avenue. Previously, we did have a smart scale project here that was a much larger reconstruction of this whole intersection area. It changed traffic flows. It was kind of a little controversial in all the things that it was trying to get done. This is a much simpler version where we're just trying to make sure that there are pedestrian crossings that are available, that there are ADA ramps that are available. Much smaller project, much smaller footprint, but should make things a little bit more accessible for everyone. It's currently in the right-of-way phase. We have 60% designs completed for it, and we're looking at completing the entire project next spring. Just down the street at Preston Avenue and Harris Street, we're upgrading this intersection so that it meets current ADA standards. It's currently in the right-of-way phase, has 60% completed, 60% plans completed, and is anticipated for completion in late summer next year. Monticello and 2nd Street, this is actually one that you'll be seeing some movement on soon. We have construction plans complete to realign this intersection. I think you can see from this overhead view that those are some very, very long crosswalks. Takes about 30 seconds to get across the road here. So we're trying to shorten those up, square up the crosswalks, make it a much shorter crossing, much safer for folks, and you won't be stranded out in the middle of the street for quite as long. Hoping to have that completed by the end of the fall this year. We have a few bridges that we're doing some upgrades on. Derry Road Bridge, this would be a replacement of the existing 2-lane bridge, which is currently substandard. Is funded with State of Good Repair funding. We are coming up with a conceptual design for what this would look like, but it's basically going to be a 2-lane bridge like it is today. During construction of this, you'll still have access across using the bike ped bridge that's there, but we'll be coming out with more maintenance of traffic and designs and things for this as the project progresses. We're looking at having this completed in summer of 2027. Belmont Bridge is almost done. This is replacing a structurally deficient bridge with a new, larger bridge that has a multimodal design with bike lanes and larger sidewalks. Functionally, this is going to be completed in about a month. And I say functionally because there's still one more step after that, which is coming through with the protective coating, applying that, and then putting down the absolute final layer of blacktop and new striping on it. That has to happen when it's warm enough overnight so that the protective layer will settle onto the concrete. But that should be happening in June. It'll be warm in June. And then we'll be done. We'll have a nice ribbon cutting.
So before you move on from that, will that protective coating, is that prevent the tagging that's going on? Is that what you mean?
It's a graffiti and weather
Okay.
protective coating. There are a few other buckets of money that we have. You may have seen that list that I've had up first and said, wait, didn't Hicks just say we had 29 projects? And then this list looks like we don't have 29 projects. Where's the rest of the projects? Well, we also have what's called revenue sharing. Every 2 years, we're able to go out and ask for revenue sharing funds. It's a 1-for-1 match. We have 5 of these projects, and they're all sort of not set up the way we actually want to go after revenue sharing funds in the future. Typically, you go after funds saying, I'm going to build this specific project. In the past, we've gone after revenue sharing funds saying, we'd like to be able to use this funding to pay for anything that's in our bike ped master plan. Back in 2013, VDOT was amenable to that sort of thing. These days, VDOT is not amenable to that sort of thing. And you can see the restrictions on these buckets at the different years. We have one in 2013. We also have one in 2021. The one in 2021 says, excuse me, we'll only build these specific projects with this funding, whereas the one in 2013 says, we'll use it to build whatever we want, basically. We have used this to build sidewalks in the city in past years. We've also used this to adjust scopes on some larger projects that are streetscapes or bridge projects. For instance, Belmont Bridge, the bike lanes originally for the designs just sort of stopped as soon as you got across to Levy. Now those bike lanes are going to be extended up the hill a little bit to Hinton. Some of these projects, in quotes, still have a little bit of funding. We're looking into whether they're committed to anything. I mean, we're looking at some of these are from 2013. We have to do some archaeology to find out what happened with those funds and figure out why they didn't get spent. We did apply some revenue sharing funds to 2 new projects in the past year. These 2 projects were just given local funding, I believe, last council session, and that will be Monticello Avenue between Quarry Road and Druid Avenue, and Quarry Road between Monticello Ave and the existing sidewalk. So basically completing an L that is missing at the entrance to our city on Monticello Ave there. There's also 3 buckets of money for paving. We get state of good repair funding from the state for routes that are considered state routes. So that'll be Emmett Street, which would be Route 29, Monticello Ave, Belmont Bridge, and High Street, which would be US 20. So these funds are used by public service to make sure that our paving schedule can be funded, and along with any funding that we program from the CIP. Along with all the things that we're working on with VDOT money, VDOT is also working on a lot of projects in our area. Some of them are in the city, some of them cross the city-county boundary, some of them are just outside of the county. So I wanted to highlight a few of those right here at the end. VDOT is doing planning in our district. They are doing planning under the program of pipeline projects. So these are projects where VDOT has recognized in the state transportation plan that there is a need. And so they come to the localities and say, how can we help you fix that need? How can we get you set up to do a smart scale application to address that need? This year, they're looking at Barracks Road at the 250 interchange, sort of between Emmett Street and Georgetown Road, and Ivy Road between Copley Road and, I believe, Boar's Head, or maybe a little bit further west past there. They're also taking a smart scale application for a Pantops Park and Ride project that was part of a previous pipeline project last year. I just want to note right now that the Ivy Road project is out for public comment and for survey, so please go on VDOT's website and give that a look.
Until the 10th, I believe.
I think you're right. Next set of projects I want to mention was Hydraulic Road. We have 2 projects there that VDOT, well, 3 technically, that VDOT is managing. 2 that are under construction or about to start construction right now. That's the roundabout at Hillsdale Drive and the pedestrian overpass that would go over 29. And then one that's about to go into design that we should be having a citizen information meeting on soon. And that's at District Avenue and Cedar Hill Road on hydraulic right there at the entrance to Stonefield. There'll be more information on that coming in July. VDOT's also moving forward with an application for smart scale, supporting an application for smart scale for the MPO for an interchange improvement at I-64 at 5th Street. They're looking at a design for a diverging diamond interchange that would also incorporate a shared use path. So diverging diamond interchange, if you're familiar with the interchange over in Pantops, it would look like that, except we're hoping for much more bike ped infrastructure involved with diversion at 5th Street. While they're managing that application, they're also managing a trail project at 5th Street, sort of back behind the Markets of Tiger Fuel. There is a trail project. It's sort of a hub for trails that are going to be leading to that location. So it's starting from the hub first and then building the spokes out of that trail system. They have just started that project this past year and have come up with designs for some bridges back there and some connections that will go up to the Wegmans area of the 5th Street Station Shopping Center. VDOT is also working on an application, well, they're working on a smart scale project that is at the 29 interchange at Fontaine Avenue. That had previously been awarded as a smart scale project. There were some changes to that design that were recently approved, and they'll be moving forward with refining those designs for the intersection improvements there at that interchange. There's another project on Avon Street that is funded that has not quite yet started. This would be with multimodal improvements right there at the city-county boundary. So some bike ped improvements that will bring people up that hill into the city. And then in Albemarle, we have several different intersection projects that VDOT's working on, and they're all roundabout designs. So we're going to get to see a lot of innovative intersections in Albemarle County right at our entrance corridors. We have one at routes 240, 250, and 680 interchange west of town, one at Ryo Road and John Warner Parkway intersection, one at Old Lynchburg and 5th Street Southwest, south of the I-64 interchange, and then one at US 20 and 53 south of the I-64 interchange at US 20. So this is all the things going on around our city and our region, and all the projects that we have so far for VDOT. And
Could we get a copy of these 2 slide decks?
Yeah.
and they should have been posted on.
Yeah, it should be posted now.
Is it? Okay, sorry. I think it was on Sunday, but anyway. Yeah, cool. I'll just look online.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sorry, we don't have time for questions right now. If you have any, if you could email it to Ben or Steve, and because we have some matters in closed session to get to. So thank you all so much. Look forward to Mike is giving the presentation next year. You set the bar high, Steve.
He'll be ready. He'll be fine.
All right, thank you. Can you read us into?
Yeah, so there's 2 certifications that I'm reading for closed session. So the first, pursuant to section 2.2-3712 of the Virginia Code, I hereby move that City Council close this open meeting and convene in a closed session as authorized by Virginia Code section 2.2-3711A1 for 1, discussion and consideration of prospective candidates to be interviewed for upcoming and existing vacancies on the Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority Board, and 2, discussion and consideration of prospective candidates to be interviewed for upcoming and existing vacancies on the Police Civilian Oversight Board. And 3, discussion and consideration of applications of prospective candidates seeking appointment to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And then concurrent with that, we have another closed session, or will be done at the same time. Have this motion pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Virginia Code. I hereby move that City Council close this open meeting and convene in a closed meeting as authorized by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A3 and A6 for 1, discussion and consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose whose discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body. And 2, discussion and consideration of the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, where if made public initially, the financial interest of the city would be adversely affected.
Okay.
Do you need 2 separate seconds? One for each?
Second.
Second, so we have both motions or motions have been second. Can we cast our vote? The motion passes, and we're now in closed session. We'll return at 6:30. For those who are joining by Zoom, there'll be a separate link for the 6:30 meeting. Thank you.